Welcome back to Green Disruptors. I'm your host, Megan Kjar, and today we're diving into a solution that's tackling both agricultural and environmental challenges. I'm joined by Pavel Hejsek, the CEO of BC Biocarbon, a company turning wood residuals into a powerful soil enhancer called Blackberry Biochar. Not only does it improve soil health and crop growth, but it also traps carbon from the atmosphere. It's a rare win-win in sustainability, and today we're going deep on how it works, why it matters, and what it takes to scale a green innovation like this. All right, welcome back to Green Disruptors. Hi, Pavel. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Megan. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Tell us who you are, what your role is at the company, and tell us about BC Biocarbon.
Pleasure. So, name is Pavel Hejsek, CEO of BC Biocarbon, and we turn biomass, like wood residuals, into a specific kind of carbon product, biochar. We call it Blackberry Biochar. And Blackberry Biochar happens to be a really productive soil enhancer. So compared to the traditional soil amendments like perlite, it just does a much better job in how quickly the plants grow, how healthy the soil is, the root biomass, and it happens to be environmentally friendly because for every ton of product we make, we trap 2 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. So it's a bit of a win-win like that.
I love that. So how long has the company been around?
For over a decade.
Okay.
And so the company's been around for over a decade. I've been with the company for only 6 months. So most of the hopefully accomplishments I'll be talking about are attributable to the founder and the founding team that have been sort of pushing and innovating for, like I said, the last 10 years.
Okay, amazing. So let's talk a little bit more, people who aren't familiar with biochar. So you talked about how it has the ability to enhance the soil as well as remove carbon from the air. Mm-hmm. So tell us where it comes from and like where your initial supply is, mm-hmm. and then give us a better understanding.
The history of biochar in itself is not all that novel. Mm-hmm. It's been around for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and if you type in biochar into YouTube, you'll get a lot of homemade biochar sort of videos. Now it gets the differentiation kicks in when you start looking at what do you want to focus on, what commercial problem are you trying to solve, and we very much started focusing on the soil amendment space, where it kind of affects what type of spec you want, what type of business model you want. For a soil amendment to work, you really want to have a particular kind of particle size so that it works for the growers. You want to be really high in carbon. I'm talking like 90% carbon. And so, and of course you want to test it in soil and make sure that it works. And so we found that working with wood residuals, specific types of wood residuals, and then running a process, pyrolysis process, but in a kind of our own unique way, yields that kind of result that helps us make a soil amendment that is what's already out there. So starting with the problem, growers work with a bunch of soil amendments like perlite. Now, perlite is this volcanic ash. If you have a plant at home, it's this thing you think is styrofoam, but it's not styrofoam.
Oh,
and it's yeah, that's right. So, and it's an inert material, and so it has one benefit. It helps the plants breathe and drain, but that's it. It doesn't interact with the soil because it's dead. Marketing of it is not easy because it's inorganic. Supply chain is a nightmare because you have to go to the mines in Turkey and Greece, some in US, and then process it. And so those are the problems we're looking to solve with biochar, And so biochar does what perlite does. It helps aeration and drainage, but it also interacts chemically because it is 90% carbon.
And so it can have some of the same effects as like a traditional fertilizer?
Fertilizer, it has some fertilizing effects,
Okay.
So it has the physical and chemical benefits. So perlite, it's just physical.
Gotcha, yeah.
Biochar, it's physical and chemical. So it's kind of like fertilizer and perlite two in one. It's the first time I'm trying that slogan. So yeah, 2 in 1 basically, chemical and
2 in 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, people love that.
It's organic. It markets well. Environmentally friendly. Again, markets very well. When you go to Walmart or Menards, you can buy it and it looks nice.
Yeah. So you're solving a big problem too for places like lumber mills that have all this excess wood waste, basically, that would either end up getting burned or I don't know what they would do with it. So tell us a little bit about that side of the solution too.
Mm-hmm. So this is where the answer is, it depends a little bit. There are different types of wood residuals, and some of them have a decent use. Some wood chips are used for pulp mills, for paper making. Granted that the paper making business is not necessarily growing. Some mills are closing down, so sawmills are looking for alternative ways to do something useful with these types of wood chips. So I don't want to say that it's all waste or that it's all just thrown into a garbage can, but that the usefulness is going down. So certainly this is an area where we are helping lumber mills and sawmills do something more valuable with what would effectively just be a residual.
Yeah. Well, I think that ties into the greater landscape of just with AI and digital everything, so much is changing for businesses, and so this is just another example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're probably not the only solution to this. There are a few, but this is a problem that the forestry industries are actively trying to solve. If you go to a biomass conference, you'll see South Carolina, Georgia forestry commissions there sort of marketing the residuals. So we're glad that's for us, it has somewhat of an economic benefit that this is a problem, and then we're solving a commercial problem on the horticulture side. So if there are multiple, if you're solving a problem on a supply chain side, but also on the commercial side, that's when you can have a very good business.
Yeah. So you've been around for 10 years. That's I'm sure a lot of lessons have been learned along the way. And again, you weren't there for all of them, yes. But where are you at in terms of who's the customer right now? What is expansion and scaling looking like in the next couple of years?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like you said, I'm giving credit here to my predecessors here. Granted, I did in my past life, I did work on a venture that was commercializing also a product that came from residuals. So I'm familiar with the pains of kind of bringing something to market that came from residuals, and that's novel. And those two stories seem very similar. So and it's kind of helpful for BC Biocarbon that it really all starts with a customer problem. And that problem is, look, we don't like some of these traditional soil amendments. We don't like perlite. It's inert. People don't like it. Looks like styrofoam. What else is out there? And so our founder Phil, kind of looked at that opportunity. Then he looked at the opportunity of all the residual wood, and he said, wait a minute, there is this ancient solution called biochar. If I do this right, I can kind of, connect these two. And that's exactly what he did. Now, it's not that easy as, okay, I'm just going to make biochar and voila. You sort of have to play around, tweak the product, because there is a biochar and there is a biochar. Some kind of biochar doesn't work in the soil. You put it in the soil and actually doesn't do a good job. So, the team had to tweak it and adapt it and then work with the customer. And then you have to get lucky on finding the right customers who will be the initial champions. And that's not easy because, even though you're solving an active problem, you really need to come across very talented and dedicated individuals working for these companies, because, they have their day job, and suddenly you're showing up with this thing called biochar and you're saying, hey, try it. It's going to do wonders. They have to spend money and time on it, and in a way they're risking their career, right? Because if they're replacing something that sort of works today with your product and it doesn't work, that puts their job in danger. So you have to get lucky on that, and it sounds like we did get very lucky on finding the right partner in that sense, who took this on, showed a lot of innovative spirit by trialing it and testing it, and we learned a lot about it. Had to make a few changes and iterations, but fast forward, that product is blended in their soil mixes, mass and other things, and it's doing great. It's doing great in retail. It's going to do great for the industrial growers, sort of the B2B2B. And so we are glad that this innovative effort ended up sort of rewarding them. But it was a journey, product iteration, commercial journey. And so we got to the point where the product's doing its job. It's doing a great job. And now the one scarcity is we don't have enough of it, which is in a way a wonderful moment. And so we have a sort of a pilot commercial facility in Saskatchewan that we're now commissioning, and we should have it ramped up by the end of the year. But we already see that that's not enough. We need more plants, which again, in a way, that's a great problem, but we need to solve it, because one thing is to have a credible product, and another thing is to be a credible supplier. And for that, you need to have a product. So,
and especially like if you're doing large scale commercial, like I'm sure there's tons that needs to go out there, or if you're supplying like a large agriculture, like that's just a
absolutely.
Can you make enough?
And so you don't let your customer down, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, they need to depend on you, and
absolutely, yeah.
It's funny, they've grown to love the product, and you're like, there's a 3-year back order.
Yeah, we really want to avoid that for sure.
Yeah.
You don't want your customer to be getting a call from Walmart that you, the ingredient, are the bottleneck. So we're working hard to prevent that issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this an issue of raising more capital to get these facilities built, or like, are you able to self-fund at this point? Like, that's an interesting challenge.
It's a project development effort right now. I think we're kind of going in two streams, as startups often do. We've been around for 10 years, but I would say we are still a startup, right? I think nailed down a lot of things, but we're scaling. And so, one thing is we are de-risking the operation we have. I mean, the operational metrics from it are coming back great, but still, there is still work to be done. We kind of have to take those learnings. We took an R&D facility and did that times 100. And so all of a sudden, there's a lot of unknowns you have to fix. Something that worked R&D phase works differently once you're a bigger manufacturing facility. So we're sort of problem solving that on a daily basis to fine tune that so we can fully de-risk the industrial expansion. And to your point, that work has already started. So we're transferring those learnings into engineering designs to have a perfect de-risked industrial site lined up. And yes, we have to fundraise for that site. Yeah. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Granted, I have to show up with a fully de-risked package before I ask for the check to fund it.
Totally, yeah. What's the timeline on building a facility like that?
If I and we do our job right, we will start issuing orders within a year, and then it takes 12 to 18 months. Some of it depends on the land you find. The operation itself, I think, nailing down the technology took a while. Nailing down the process to be as efficient as it is, that's one of the secret sauces that the team developed, and making the quality at scale, again, that wasn't that easy. The actual operation's fairly simple. Building takes 12 to
So building the facility is the easiest part once you get the funding. And
once you get the funding, and I'm sure that my engineering team, if they ever get to see this, they'll say, "Oh my God, no, it's not easy."
They're like, "How dare you?"
Yeah, it's. But I would say, thanks to this is where going through the pains of R&D and then the first scale up is helpful. And there are pains, but you know what to avoid. And it never, fully goes away, but I think doing it now for the second time will be much, much easier. And I think the timeline, we just know how long it will take. The question, of course, is depending on the site we choose, will there be permitting and etc. But we have some very capable folks that can do it very quickly once the machines arrive.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, just from your own experience, like you're saying, this is the second time through. We talked a little bit about what you did before, but what maybe problems or maybe what mistakes did you make before that you're like, I'm for sure not doing that again?
Yeah, gosh, yeah, that's long list, long list of things. You know, sometimes, sometimes it's very tempting in with sort of technical innovation and green one especially, sort of really fall in love with your solution and accept that the world will fall in love with it as well. But just because you have a cool way to make something or innovative way to make something, or the fact that you make something from something like that's waste doesn't really make people want it. I think so I would say the one piece that and I think the BC Biocarbon team has done a great job at it, that is avoiding, is overplaying the environmental piece. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
surveys out there that say, hey, would you buy or pay more for a more environmental XYZ? And like 80% say yes, but when they're actually in a store, and when they make actual decisions with their money, it's at best a tiebreaker. So really, sometimes I would have a product that actually has amazing commercial utility, but sometimes it's very tempting to talk about the process because you feel like this is so cool. For you, this is the cool part.
Well, and of course you think that you helped
Yeah,
make it. Like
that's
it's your
right.
baby. Yeah.
Exactly, right? But I think that the focus on the customer and why this matters to them is starting with that is the key. And so I think this is the big thing to avoid for any technical, I think very technical founder. And I'm not a technical founder, but I'm sort of in love with the technologies that the technical founders came up with. I think that
Well,
would
it's
be
funny you say for technical startups. I think that's true all across the board. Like we get too attached to our solutions and to our
true.
technologies, and it's exciting, especially if people who have an engineering mind or a science background. Like it is exciting. That's why they show up to work, because innovation is exciting to them. But that's not the reason people are making the decision at Home Depot.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the R&D managers who is making the decision for, in the first step, and the marketing manager on behalf of the brand.
Yep.
And she or he are making a huge, huge decision. So yeah, you just kind of have to really make it easy for them to say yes or avoid reasons to say no. And sometimes it takes a lot of homework, I
Yeah.
think I envisioned sometimes in B2B we envision you make a call and you'll get a lot of excitement and that's
Sounds
great.
great.
Sounds awesome, send it over and then you realize you're one of 50 things in their pipeline and now of course
Yep.
you have a great product, it progresses through the pipeline, but it can be tough to accelerate through that pipeline. So you kind of have to budget for that when you're scaling.
Yeah, for sure. Have you found any ways to speed that up or kind of like skip a few steps along the way?
I've tried like 10 things, 9 of which not, I want to say they helped, but in reality, maybe not. But look, there are a few things. One is, and this is nothing novel, but it's really good to have done your homework. The fact that you're a B2B ingredient doesn't mean that the customer should know more about your product than you. You should know more about your product than your customer, including how it works in the end application, because that's how you maybe accelerate like a 12-year product development to 6 months when you have the answers, when you opine on how to do the trials. So, and doing that homework is not easy. It takes patience, it takes money, it takes time, right? So it's important to do that in parallel as you're developing the product, and as
Yeah.
you're working with the customer early on. And so that's kind of the homework piece. And then the tactics in getting the customers, tactically I found trade shows really helpful. I say this only because I think sometimes trade shows and conferences going into it, I thought maybe it's not all that helpful, but it's actually quite helpful, because like,
Well, people like to know people and shake your hand and know your face,
exactly,
and yeah,
exactly. Like people are not as eager to have you over for a visit anymore, even if you're
yeah.
willing to fly over there. So you have a Zoom, it's a structured 30-minute Zoom, very transactional, but at a conference, you meet 10, 20, 30 people, you show them. Showing and seeing is believing, right? You can show them your beautiful biochar and what it does in the soil. And I think that can sometimes accelerate the courting period of 1 to 3 months.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. So this is good advice. You know your stuff.
I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I mean, but it is ironic because in theory all these things are simple, but being able to systematically do them all in the right way in the right time is definitely really challenging. So
Totally, totally, and yeah, and look, you know, I, I frame it as advice, but it's just what I believe as I look at the different tools. This is what worked, in both ventures for me, and that's not to say that every trade show effort is successful. I would say maybe 7 out of 10 are not, but the three is tend to be a really good source of intel and information. You learn how you fail, where you fail, right? Like
and
people
that's
tell you
more
very
valuable than learning where
exactly,
you were right. Yeah.
exactly. I mean that's really painful. Hearing where you're short, how your ingredient is either doesn't taste great, or how your soil mix doesn't attach well to your hands, because it just means, okay, I have to go home and do more work, or in my case, or in
Yeah.
our case, our technical technical colleagues have to do more work.
Yeah. But I like what you said earlier about, doing your homework, doing the research all along the way. It's like if you can kind of document this process and continue the research all along the way, then you've got more angles of story to tell to people that
Yeah,
make you relatable, make the product more valuable,
absolutely, yeah.
because they
You
know
know,
like you're leading with the problems you've already solved.
oh, yeah, no, exactly. The final value proposition. Look, you're not, I'm not offering you a biochar. I mean, frankly, who cares? I'm offering you
Yeah.
I'm offering you a phenomenal potting mix that will make your plant grow twice as fast and your root biomass be super healthy. And by the way, it's environmentally friendly. It's trapping carbon forever. Isn't that so much better than volcanic ash that people think is styrofoam? You know, and it happens to be really expensive. So that's kind of the way I think to go about it.
Yeah.
Uh, getting like people's head, I think.
No, yeah, and that can be hard because I think we assume we can maybe guess what people are thinking, but that's never the way to go.
Yeah.
Like you have to actually talk to them and get inside what the root of what they care
Mm.
about. So that's your research piece.
That's absolutely, yeah. Sometimes, and this is, I know I'm saying like a sales 101 here, but ideally you ask more questions than they ask you. So, especially
Yeah.
when you have something as, again, biochar, I don't, no one really knows what that is.
Yeah, oh, I didn't know what it was till a few months ago. Now it's like my favorite subject.
I'm glad you found out. Yeah.
I actually talked about it at dinner on Mother's Day at my in-laws' house yesterday, and they're like, "This is not interesting." I'm like, "Yes, it is."
It can be. It can be. It's we bought a bunch of the bag, our customers' bags, and we're gardening with it. And too soon to say how well it'll grow, but gives you confidence it'll grow well.
Yeah.
So
Well, I gotta pitch it to my husband. He's the gardener in our family, so
see, yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Okay.
Blackberry Biochar. That's the way to find it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure I'm gonna go find it, and then I'll tell you what my feedback is.
Please do
Yeah.
that. Track the progress.
Sounds yeah. No, I love that. Well, is there anything else you'd like to highlight before we wrap it up here?
So much, but I'll say no because I wouldn't know where to start. No, so yeah. Well,
Well, we
thank
would
you for
go down
having me. It's
another
fun to talk
30-minute
about
rabbit
it.
hole.
Yeah, I can talk more about carbon products and biochar forever. So, no, thank you for having me. It's always fun to talk about it, and Yeah, look, just want to give kudos to, I know I'm kind of talking about accomplishments that that largely sit with other people, so I just want to give kudos to people who built BC Biocarbon. It's an exceptional startup with an exceptional product that solves commercial problems and environmental problems. So yeah, I hope you'll see us in every Walmart under the sun.
Yes, I hope so too. And, to give you the credit you deserve, they hired you because of your experience doing this kind of thing. So don't brush away all the credit.
Hopefully they were not wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pavel.
Thank you, Megan. Have a good one.
That's a wrap on this episode of Green Disruptors. A huge thank you to Pavel and the team at BC Biocarbon for sharing their journey. If you're curious about biochar, want to see greener products on shelves, or just love hearing about real solutions to big environmental problems, this conversation was for you. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And stay tuned for more episodes spotlighting the people and ideas changing our planet for the better.